Notebook.
All right, everybody. Welcome to Weekly Wednesdays with Julie and Christine. I might have to add that to the title, Christine, because you've been in every one. It's awesome.
I love what you do.
Thanks, darling. So, what we will do tonight is, Christine, you might have some questions, and you might have more questions from the questions that I'm going to talk about. So, what
Okay.
happened between last time and this time is some questions came up. And I wrote them down and I thought about the responses and I gave responses, to everybody that I talked to. And I thought, hey, I'll share them here. And
Nice.
we will go from there. Okay. Also, this weekly Q&A is brought to you by Property Guys. So that is for West Kelowna all the way south. It, wherever you're watching this, reach out to a Property Guys person if you are thinking about selling, because what it does is it helps you keep more of the money that you make when you sell. Now, I love realtors. I've used tons and tons of realtors. Ed Siffeldine, Pam Gill, her brother Carm Gill. We're currently using Calvin Hexter. I love realtors, make no mistake. And sometimes it makes sense to use Property Guys. So the last person that I worked with a Property Guys deal, she saved about $60,000, which she put toward a pool in her house in Salmon Arm. So that's that. Just one example. There are many. So that's what this episode is brought to you by. Property Guys is a collaborator with the Okanagan Real Estate Investment Group. All right. So at the end of this talk, I'm going to show you the back office and just kind of walk you through the Street Smart Buyer program. And if you're interested in learning more about it, then you reach out to me. Okay. Because digital learning is a great way to learn about anything that you want to learn about from the comfort of your own home or while you're working, because we have a phone app and all kinds of fancy things. But let's dive into things. So the first couple of questions that I talked about when I was getting ready for this was talking to somebody I work with. His name is Mark, great guy out of Calgary. And what's been happening in Calgary is property values are going up and up and up and up. And he's noticed that a lot of his neighbors and they themselves, their property assessments are skyrocketing, which means that well, the city of Calgary can charge more money for taxes. And I don't think it's anything underhanded or anything like that, but a lot of people are actually contesting their assessments because, again, it raised their taxes. So that's actually something that you can do if you think your property assessment is off base and you know it's going to have a big impact on your cash flow or just on your bottom line every month, then you do have the ability to do that. Now, he was asking specifically actually about motivated sellers. And what if they look at their tax assessment and they see that it's, pretty high and we offer, well below that? And here was my answer to him, and here's my answer to you. When somebody is a motivated seller, and believe me, I have been one, we had at one time 35 units just upside down equity. I was trying to sell them creatively. It didn't end up working out that way. Found solutions that were pretty temporary. And I swear this was in Edmonton in 2009, 2010. The bottom just absolutely dropped out of the market. And I had condos. So condos that were once worth like $150,000 a door were now worth $70,000. And again, I couldn't, it didn't even feel like I could give them away. Okay, maybe I could have got them away. I didn't. And so I was really, really hurting. And what ended up unfortunately happening is made the tough decision to go into foreclosure and even bankruptcy protection. So what's great about like wholesaling courses that we do offer, or coaching, or offering training on finding motivated sellers, whether you decide to take a course or you decide to learn it like on your own, like a DIY type of scenario on like YouTube or something, there's lots of information out there. When you're talking to a truly motivated seller, they just want the property off their hands. They want it out of their life. They don't want to have to go back there. They don't want to have to deal with it anymore. When it comes to a property assessment, I've dealt with a lot of motivated sellers, like a lot. And again, I've been one, never cared about my assessment. I just wanted it off my plate. So really that's a long answer, but the short answer is truly motivated sellers don't care about their assessment. They just want their problem solved. Okay. So that's the short answer when it comes to motivated sellers. And that's a great way to screen somebody to see whether or not they're motivated. If somebody reaches out and is just like, yeah, I really need to sell my house, and then I throw a number out there, and let's say it's $200,000 below assessed value, and they're like, well, what about my assessed value? If somebody came back to me with a response like that, I would know they're not that motivated, and that's okay. I'd rather help people who need me than people who just want to sell their house. So there is a big difference, and it's a win. It's a win-win. It has to be a win-win as far as I'm concerned. When I'm talking to anybody or when I'm working with anybody, it has to be a win-win. Okay, so that's my answer on the property assessment side of things. One of the other questions that these folks, actually a couple, Mark and JC, and another thing they asked was, why would a realtor ever send me somebody that why would a realtor ever send me an off-market deal? Well, there are scenarios where it just doesn't make sense to hire a realtor. The top one is that there's no equity. Somebody maybe has refinanced their home, or they got a second or third mortgage on it, and there is just no room and no money to pay a realtor, equity wise. So that is a scenario that a realtor could send you a deal and say, hey, Christine, I found this. I talked to this lady. She's super nice. She really needs to sell. It doesn't make sense for me to list it because, well, I'll let her explain that to you, confidentiality, that kind of thing. And so, what's interesting about a deal like that has no equity? Well, if it has financing on it, there will likely eventually be equity, because even if it's a 30-year mortgage that's brand new, in 30 years, that mortgage is going to get paid off. So that is where the strategy of rent to own can come in very handy, and where you can basically line things up and do a rent to own from a motivated seller. Or in Alberta, agreements for sale, they're done a lot, not so much in BC. And let me tell you about something in BC when it comes to this type of scenario. I'm going on a little bit of a rabbit hole, so bear with me. I will circle back to the original question. In British Columbia, if you do an agreement for sale, let's say I'm going to buy a house for $600,000. Let's just use simple math. And I want to do an agreement for sale. So that means that the seller agrees to sell the house to me under certain terms. So I might, give a down payment and then send monthly payments based on, probably might be amortized, or it might be interest only. But it's kind of like the seller being the bank, only it's not a VTB. Okay, so got to talk to real estate investment lawyers, especially in BC, to understand how this goes. And I'm not going to go into depth of it. Okay. In a rent to own, if I'm renting to own a house from a motivated seller, then the title stays in their name. I give them maybe a down payment, maybe a minimal down payment, and then I take over payments. I make sure they get paid enough to cover their costs most of the time. There are exceptions to that. And but it stays in their it's the title stays in their name. There's no change. And an option to purchase can be registered on the title without triggering anything. Okay. In British Columbia, because we have land transfer tax, if an agreement for sale is registered on title, then land transfer tax is due immediately. So land transfer tax in BC is I can't remember. I have like calculation somewhere. There's all kinds of BC land transfer tax calculators around. And it could be like 12, 13, 14, 15. It could be like really a lot of money because a lot of properties in BC are very expensive. So so if you do an agreement for sale, then you've got to pay that money out of pocket. And I don't like doing that if I don't have to. So those are a couple of examples that can be done using rent to own in a scenario where there isn't a lot of equity, where again, it doesn't make sense for somebody to use a realtor. And some properties are just in rough shape, and the realtor never wants to go back there, like a hoarder house or something that needs a lot of work. Maybe they just don't feel comfortable in a house like that. It's like, I just might want to stick to the high-end stuff that's shiny and new, and I don't have to worry about anything, right? Might send you a motivated seller that way, and that could be a great deal for the right, usually investor, okay? And thirdly, sometimes it's just not a fit. Sometimes the realtors will just be like, that person, I don't know, I don't want to, that's going to be tough for me to work with them. They're already talking about how I'm ripping them off by being a realtor. I don't know. It's just not a fit. Maybe you can make it make sense for them. So that's another reason why a realtor might send you um, a property. So let's go back to the rough condition type of property. What's good practice to do is, let's say I buy something that's really rough, but I get a great price on it, and I end up making a wholesale fee. Okay. In some places, you're not allowed to send a referral like cash, like referral money. I don't know exactly what places you can or cannot, but you don't want to mess around with that stuff, obviously, because it can get people into trouble. And plus, if it's just illegal, then it's not the right thing to do. So, what I will do though is I'll say to the investor, if it's somebody that's going to flip, and I know that in advance, I'll say, listen, when you flip it, when you go to sell it, please use this realtor because he brought me this deal. So you wouldn't have this deal without this realtor. So you should really use them. I always do that. I always do that. And that's a great reason for a realtor to send you business again and again. And it's also just like it's the right thing to do. Um, and it might be a flip, or it might be a burr where somebody buys it, renovates it, rents it out, refinances it. I still say, hey, down the road, if you ever go to sell, please keep this realtor in mind for when you sell the deal. So that's why realtors might want to send you business because, it could create future pipeline business. And who doesn't want a full pipeline? I know I want a full pipeline. That's me. That's probably a lot of you. So those are a couple of questions. Any questions on that, Christine? No? Make sense?
Yep. Nope, everything makes sense.
You're so
Um,
smart.
I like that clarity on why realtors would send us off-market deals because that was kind of wiggling in my brain too. So that makes a lot of sense.
I tell you, so many realtors, that's one of the reasons why I love them. They act in good faith.
But you would want to compensate them somehow too, I would imagine.
Yeah, well, but the other thing too is like, absolutely you want to compensate it first
Yeah.
and foremost if you can.
Yeah.
And I've just found with a lot of realtors, maybe not everyone, but most of them, like they'll do a CMA for me immediately. They will they'll tell me what they think's going on, like, because they got their finger on the pulse of what's happening in the world. And then a situation like this, maybe they do or don't expect anything back because again, well, the next person that you talk to could say, I'm thinking of listing my house. This realtor just sent you a lead. I'm sending that realtor the business,
Hmm.
you know? And realtors know that. And I mean, that's a good faith way to be, just in
Yeah.
general. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Nice.
It can, just reciprocity. Reciprocity works. Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. So next was a question I had today actually about RSPs. So this really cool gentleman and his wife reached out. His name's Neil, and they were asking if they can use their RSPs to invest in another country. In other words, use the RSPs and buy something in another country. And first of all, the answer is no. And secondly, they can't use their RSPs to buy property. That is just not allowed. So at least it's not through Olympia Trust, called an arm's length mortgage. So your retirement funds, you can't use them yourself. You can't lend them to your spouse. You can't lend them to anybody that you're related to by marriage or that you own a company with. So they have these rules in place. Um, and you can only uh, lend on as a second mortgage. Okay, and I'll talk about that in a minute. You can only lend as a second mortgage on Canadian property. So you can do a self-directed RSP account through Olympia Trust and invest in a company that owns US property because the company is Canadian. It has to be a Canadian company. The company is Canadian and they buy an apartment building in Phoenix. That can happen. That definitely can happen. It does happen. So that is a way to invest in real estate, but you're not really investing in real estate. You're investing in a company that may or may not succeed. So I hesitate with that. Really look closely at track records and success rates before you decide to do that. Um, Now, what a person can do, right? Because what these folks want to do is do some upgrades to a property that they own in another country. What you can do if you have equity in your house is you can borrow somebody else's RSPs as a mortgage. You could take that money, so essentially RRSP money, and use it to do the upgrades on the foreign property. Or we've got our next OREG event actually is Mike Wolf coming to talk about how Canadians can invest in the United States. And I have got another great friend, his name's Glenn Sutherland. He teaches Canadians how to do it very successfully as well. So many Canadians have tons of equity in their homes. So what they can do is borrow somebody's RSPs as a mortgage. Again, I'm going to talk about that, and they can use that money to buy US property, but essentially paying cash for it. So that is definitely something that some Canadians do. So you can use other people's RSPs, but unfortunately, you cannot use your own unless you decide to cash out. Okay? So just take a quick sip of my coffee. Boy, I love coffee. If you decide to cash out your RSPs, you probably have a tax consequence, but you need to talk to your accountant. I am not an accountant. I don't even play one on TV. So don't make that decision without talking to an accountant because you could have a major tax bill. I have not worked with people that this has happened to, but I have heard that sometimes a trust company will claw back a chunk of RSP money before they distribute it to somebody pulling funds out in order to have it on reserves in case CRA is demanding it. I've definitely heard of people who pulled out RSPs and then in this case, it was Olympia Trust, notified CRA. So CRA was on them, like they were on them. Okay. So you need to be very, very careful with that. Talk to an accountant. Now, that said, we did do this with a rent-to-own property. Actually, we were selling it, and this really cool couple, Sean and Kim. Sean had $25,000 in RSPs. He's like, this is all I have. It is the only way I can access a down payment so I can buy this property. And I'm like, well, Sean, it is your money. You can take it out if you want, but you need to talk to your accountant. Okay, Sean. So don't do this without talking to him. So he goes and he talks to his accountant, and his accountant knew his situation. He knew his job situation. And he said, you know, something you can do is you can go talk to your boss. You can ask your boss to bump your pay over into the next year. So you're gonna have to tighten up your belt. You're gonna have to live off of, limited means for the next 3 months, because that is about the time of year that it was happening. And he's like, I think I can make that work, because his wife could pick up overtime shifts and kind of make up the money difference. So that's what they did. And so what that did, because he did that over 3 months, is it kept him in a lower tax bracket when he pulled the money out. And so his tax bill was not that high. In fact, I don't think it was anything. And that's how he and his accountant strategized it. And it was fine, because he didn't make additional income. And he went to his boss, and he's like, can you just not pay me for the last 4 months it was like 4 months, I think, of this year? He's like, well, why? And he's like, because I want to buy a house. And his boss was able to do that for him. Okay. Not everybody's boss is willing to do that for somebody, but they were able to make it work. And as far as I'm aware, it was all completely above board. He just didn't have a paycheck for 4 months. And that, again, it balanced out his income, kept him within the threshold, and they were still able to live decently. So that's how that worked. And they did. They tightened up their belts big time, because Kim was able to get some overtime shifts. So she was able to make a bit more, but certainly not what they were bringing in. Okay. So that is something that can work. So keep that in mind, because, hey, it might end up meaning the difference between getting a property and not. Okay. So the next question was, we were talking to Neil and his wife, and he's like, how does this work anyway? I've never even heard of this. And that is because there's nothing in it for the banks to make money on your RSPs if you self-direct them. So again, you've got to get your retirement funds into a self-directed account. I work with Olympia Trust, and I used to work with Canada Western Trust, or Canada Western Bank. And that's the only trust companies I'm familiar with. So I will only speak, and I'll really only speak to Olympia, because that's who I've worked with predominantly for the past decade. And so what I like about RSPs, so I'm a house. This is all the equity in my house. I'm going to try to do a visual for us, folks. I'm not really a house. Okay. So let's say you have a house, and you've got a mortgage that's at this, like 50% loan to value. So the first mortgage is right here. What you can do is you can get a second mortgage, and you could get a second mortgage through like a mortgage broker if you want to. And by all means, if you want to, then go to a mortgage broker and try that. The thing is, you're going to have lending fees, and it's probably going to be really expensive, and you're going to need to qualify for financing. Okay. So what can happen is somebody could take their RSPs. I'm going to put my hand down for a second. Somebody could get their RSPs, and they can convert it from where it is, like making money in the stock market or managed by a mutual fund or wherever it is. They can put it into a self-directed Olympia Trust account. That's the company I know. So again, that's the company I'm going to talk about. You put your RSPs there, your LIRA there, your TFSA. I'm told you can do your RESP. I've also heard of an RLSP. I've not used an RESP, okay, Registered Education Savings Plan. So can't speak to that, but I have used an RLSP, which is like a locked-in retirement account. It's a registered locked in SP, whatever that stands for. So you put it in a self-directed account and you could say, I want my money to be a mortgage now. I want it to be like the bank on a property. I want it to be on dirt, bricks, and sticks. And I even know the property that I want it to go on to. Okay. So let's say again, I'm full equity of a property. Let's say that it's $500,000 for simplicity. And my first mortgage is at $250,000 because I've lived there a while and I paid down a bunch of equity, paid down a bunch of debt, plus it's gone up in value. All right. And I want to get $100,000 second mortgage, and somebody has $100,000. They can put their retirement money in a self-directed account, and that $100,000 mortgage can go in second position onto that equity. Okay. So now I've got a $350,000 of debt on the house. Instead of 250 with just one mortgage, I've got 350 with two mortgages. That's basically how it works. And nobody knows that hardly anybody knows that you can do this. And what I really like about it is that first and foremost, because I love not having to qualify for financing, because that is how I started in real estate back in the day, back in 2001, assumable mortgages. All I have to do is help guide somebody's money into a self-directed account. And then they are the bank. And I say, do you want to do this? This is what your money is going to mean. I've done presentations. I've done examples of presentations of this type of scenario before. Hopefully you'll be able to see something online. But I can take somebody's money, register it on title, and show them how much it will grow. And you have to pay at least 5% right now into somebody's account every single year. That could be monthly payments, it could be quarterly, it could be semi-annually, and as well as annually. And so their registered funds grow from monthly payments that you give them. So it's no bank qualify. You just ask, do you want to do this or no? And if they say yes, and you meet the parameters, and there are a long list of parameters, if they say yes, then as long as you do the paperwork correctly and you use lawyers and you have to use appraisals, there's safeguards in place. Then as long as they say yes, then you can access this money, and it's very simple. It's pretty darn easy, although there can be snags. And it's a great way to refinance your house without having to go through a bunch of fairly can be complicated qualifying steps. Okay, so it can be a good fit for some folks. And I love mortgage brokers, by the way. I've used a ton of them. Dan Heon, Craig Van Dolder, Wes Rosso. Like I've used a lot of mortgage brokers. So okay, I love the realtors, love the mortgage brokers. Just letting everybody know. Uh, Another thing I like about RSPs or registered funds is that it's a person, so I can negotiate. So I'll give you an example. I was working with Chris a while ago, presented to him, and I did the presentation. I asked my magic question. I said, do you have any questions for me? He's like, no, it looks pretty straightforward. I tried to be as simple as possible. And then I was like, well, there's really only one question, Chris, I have for you. Is there any reason you don't want to move forward? I had presented to him 10% interest on his house. It was on his money. It was going on my property. And he said, yeah, I want to make 11%, not 10. And I knew my math. I know my math. I always know my math because I'm kind of a nerd. But everybody can be a nerd. Being a nerd is very good when it comes to real estate. You need to know your math. And I said, okay, well, I think I can do 11. If I can do 11, is there any other reason you don't want to move forward? He said, nope, that's what I want. I'm like, okay, let me double check with my team, make sure it's okay with them. But I think we can move forward with this, right? And we did, and it was great. His money grew tons and tons and tons. Chris and Kim. So it's a person. It's like I'm talking to the lender. I'm talking to the decision maker. And it is really neat to be able to do that. It's faster, it's more efficient. Yeah, things can come up. I do a lot of videos on that. It- there can be issues. And what I mean by issues is just if you're not used to it, then yeah, it can be challenging to because sometimes Olympia will throw curveballs and that's just life, okay? So and anybody can handle that. Believe me, if I can handle it, anybody can. So I really like the fact that you can just negotiate with a person, all right? Not a committee that you'll never meet or shake hands with. And then finally, I love registered funds because I'm able to help grow and protect somebody's hard-earned money. So it's not everybody has that luxury, you know? So many people think they have absolutely no choice, but people can actually have their money protected on dirt, bricks, and sticks on a property that they can drive by and say, my money is protected there. And that is a really cool feeling. It's just one of the many reasons, it's another one of the many reasons that I like using registered funds. So that's kind of how a mortgage works. I don't know if my visual helped. I hope that it did. Um, that's what I did. That's how I showed Neil. That's how I talked to Neil and his wife about it today. I was like, okay, I'm the house. I'm the equity. So, any questions about that, Christine?
Yes,
Yeah. Oh, good.
yes. So I just want to, and I mean, I know that isn't, it's not as simple as the way I'm going to ask it or say it, but I
Sure.
just want to make sure I understand the simple process. So let's say I have someone that has RRSP funds. They're already in Olympia Trust, they're ready to go. So I would have to call Craig and look into refinancing my house first before I borrow those RRSP funds as a second mortgage?
I'm really glad you asked that because I did not talk about that. And the answer is no, you don't have to
Oh,
call Craig. You can do it
okay.
yourself as long as it's your property.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I can just ask my friend for $100,000 and she can take her self-directed RSP funds, set up a second mortgage. Oh, so you don't have to. Okay, let me just cross off that note then. I don't need to qualify. So then, go ahead.
No, I was just repeating what you said. You don't have to qualify.
Okay. Okay. So then that $100,000 lands in my bank account, and now I can do what I want with that.
Mhm. You could buy a Corvette, a boat. You could go to Costa Rica. No, don't do that. You can,
No.
but the bet, and you know that. I'm
Yeah.
just pulling your leg. Um, I know people who have done things like that, and it's like, oh, come on, man. You
Yeah. What are you
borrowed it
doing?
on real estate. It's the only place it can go. Why would you put it on anything other than real estate? I mean,
Well, something that's
there
going
are
to
a lot
make
of
you money,
options.
right?
Sorry?
Something that's going to make you money.
Yeah, and so like a great purpose for it would be a down payment on a house or maybe a down payment on maybe a lease option where a down payment is required, but you don't have to do the financing. We typically when we use RSP funds, we're typically putting into it an improvement in another property.
Hmm.
So like we could put
Hmm.
50 grand into a house and make it worth $300,000 more. That's great leverage. Um, we all we put money, we put real estate mortgage funds into real estate.
Right.
Oh,
Right.
always. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Or real estate related. Yeah. That's our preference. Yeah.
So now I have two mortgages on my house,
Mhm.
and the lender of the RRSP funds is the bank. So they're on title, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So
How many
Susie
mortgages
Martin,
can I have on my house?
Susie Martin, I'm making up a name.
Yeah.
Susie Martin Inc.
Yeah.
It'll say Olympia Trust held on behalf of like the person's actual name. They can look up title
Okay.
and see their name in their account number. It's like, see, it's right there.
So how many mortgages can I have on my house?
You can have three. You can go up to
Three.
third. Yeah, Olympia, that's another
Okay.
really great question. You can go up to third, and you have
Okay.
to keep it below 90% loan to value. And 90% is higher than most any mortgage broker will go. Understandably,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
they're limited. Um, and you need to use caution going that high loan to value when you are borrowing. And then the loan to value can be based on assessed value or an appraisal that's been done in the last year, or you can buy a property and use Olympia Trust as part of the purchase as one of the
Okay.
lenders. But the purchase price you can't use RSP funds to buy a property that's over 90% of purchase. So 90% of the value of purchase. So a scenario where that might make sense is if you're trying to get a property fast and you've got RSPs to use it, but it can be RSP can throw in a little curveballs at the end. They can change rules in
Mm-hmm.
mid-deal. So you need to be very careful with purchases that you're
Yeah.
working with. If you're doing this with purchase, you need to make sure you've got a good relationship with the seller in the event that something
Oh,
goes
with the
sideways.
seller of the
Yeah,
house of the property.
yeah. You need to
Ah,
be very, very careful. So,
okay.
where I like to do, again, we put it into property improvements. I'll give you a perfect example. This house, we borrowed 75,000 and put 25 into another property and put 50 into our house, and it made the value go up by about $200,000 because it was a
Okay.
very dated 1990s chopped up rooms. Like we had a living room and a sunken family room and another living room,
Oh, wow.
a dining room, and a kitchen and
Wow.
walls just everywhere.
Yeah.
So yeah, we used that 50,000
Okay.
and completely renovated a couple bathrooms and the main level and updated like just painted it throughout. Paint can have miraculous effects. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
we replaced everything. We basically replaced everything on the main level, and it bumped our value tremendously.
So you refinanced it and you were able to pay back.
Yeah, we were able to refinance.
Wow,
Yeah,
very cool.
yeah. So it worked
Okay.
out really well, and that is we only did it because we knew it would have a very big value add.
Right.
Yeah,
Right. Huh. Okay.
yeah. So it could work really well for sure.
Okay. We may have to have another conversation one day.
Yeah, well, we're working together, so you just
Yes.
schedule with me. Absolutely.
Yes.
And
Awesome.
if anybody is curious about working together, then just go to the link that's around here. You can schedule with me. We can have a very like no pressure conversation. I I hope I haven't ever created pressure with you, Christine.
God,
Maybe
no.
sometimes, maybe when we were
Well, only for my
around
own
deals
good.
and things. Well, I hope so,
Yes.
And at
Yes.
the same time, it's just like coaching is either a fit or it's not.
Yeah.
And either way is 100% fine.
Yeah. And
But
if anybody wants to talk to me about it, I'm very happy to talk about it.
you're awesome. That's so sweet. So nice of you. So now I'm going to take you through um what did I say? I was going to take you through
The back
thank
office?
you, the back office.
Yeah.
Now this is the shameless plug for some of the online training that I have created. Shameless. I don't know. I guess it is shameless. Yeah. I've got this information that frequently people will say, why don't you talk more about that? Okay. So this is a very affordable way to get really well. world-class training without having to spend an arm and a leg and take a lot of risk. Okay. So what I'm going to go through now, it's $47 a month to get access to the Street Smart Buyer program. Okay. So this is my back office. Uh, it's got kind of a discussion area where people can interact. We've got 66 members here, people that you can connect with, other real estate investors. You can post a deal, a success story, a lesson, something that might help other people. Go crazy in there. It's a lot of fun. And then learning, if you decide to access the Street Smart Real Estate Investment course, sorry, the Street Smart Buyer course, you'll automatically get the free tools and you'll get the OREG membership, which is a whole bunch of recorded sessions. So this is the Street Smart Buyer course. And we find what I do is I go through how to find deals and more. So I talk about like what to look for, what to look out for, how to talk to motivated sellers, how they sound, the kinds of things that they say, and what is really, really valuable, I find are just things to look out for and things to look for. For instance, I remember almost buying a place or really being interested in a place and having these super motivated sellers who spent a bunch of money renovating it, and they really didn't want me to see the backyard. I'm like, well, I gotta see the backyard. So just show me the backyard. I go out and you could hear the buzzing, and it was power lines like 20 feet away, right? And I just knew nobody would probably want to live there. And so, of course, it didn't buy it. And they probably shouldn't have bought it in the first place either. I got tons of examples like that. This is how to analyze deals. It goes step by step through through the deal analyzer. The motivated seller worksheet and how it works, why it works, and how it can help you basically become an expert at any area that is any neighborhood of any city. So whether you're investing in your own town or you're looking to maybe find deals in the United States and sell them to wholesalers, or in Edmonton, because I say that because I'm in Kelowna, in whatever town, you can become an expert just by understanding what property values are, how properties look in a certain area, what size of lots they typically are, whether or not they have garages, like what age they are, because land developers typically, the way neighborhoods are built are by land developers. And so they usually use like a cookie cutter, like baby boomer bungalows. Okay. They're all the same. And then eventually, like in the 80s, some developers realize, I think we'll add some variety in. So a split is, a two-level split is a two-level split. A raised bungalow is a raised bungalow. Multi-level splits, they'll give you a little bit more of a variety. But if you find an area, like a whole neighborhood, you'll soon find that, oh, that kind of house is worth this, and this kind of house is worth this. And this is how they typically are. Some of them have master bedrooms with an ensuite, and some of them with like a 4-piece ensuite, and some of them only have a 2-piece. And like you get to know, but only from the more that you look at property. So it's a really good tool on why to on how to use that. Section 3, numbers and how to calculate ROA. So ROI, that goes through the deal analyzer that everybody has access to. If you've signed up for my free tools, and if you haven't, go ahead and do that. Session 4, how to market and find motivated sellers. So what kind of language to use, what kind of methods, like sandwich board signs, flyers, cork board, coffee shop, they'll have a cork board and they'll have like all kinds of flyers on there and upcoming events and concerts and that kind of thing. Put your iBuy Houses stuff there. more marketing ideas for motivated sellers. The bandit sign course is in there. And if you sign up for the Street Smart Buyer program, I always get it mixed up. Then you get automatic access to the bandit sign course as well. So it's included in the training, and then so you get like two more. You get the digital bandit sign course and the bandit sign course when you sign up for this. So lease options, we talk about lease options, and then more on how to find deals and lease option paperwork. So it's basically how to uh, find off-market deals, find motivated sellers, because if you can find off-market deals and motivated sellers, you can buy properties without having to qualify for financing. And the better at finding property you get, then the more valuable you're going to be, because you're basically going to be more knowledgeable. And um, yeah, this stuff will take hours for you to review, but once you start putting it into action, you're going to be an expert before you know it. Agreements for sale, vendor take back mortgages, and title. That all of this is such important information. I talked a little bit about agreements for sale tonight. I talked a little bit about vendor takebacks. We go into depth, super depth in session 8. And the importance of title. Man, you can get so much information from title. And wait till you see the title that I show. It's an interesting title. And then I talk about joint ventures. So that is where you buy property with other people. And so if you can find motivated sellers and find people that want to be investing in real estate but don't want to do all the work that you're willing to do, and I'll take all the training that you're willing to take, like being here tonight on a Wednesday or watching the recording, um, a lot of people would like their money to be growing in real estate, but they don't want to do the hard work. So that is just kind of a summary of the Street Smart Buyer program. I created it in 2016. It is not new. Oh no, I think
It's
I
not
created
out,
it in 2014.
but it's still relatively current. I mean, it's still, yeah.
There may be a thing or two where you're like, that's outdated. What are you talking about? Plus, I have a headset on, and I'm that much younger. I probably sound different, you know? I do. And it's just one of these days I might do a refresh on it, but all of the information is relevant.
Yeah.
And anything that's outdated, boy, if there's something big that you're like, hey, what about this? And I'm like, and you have a question, you just contact me.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's like, I've got I am available. I am available. And I love talking about real estate, in case you hadn't noticed. So keep that in mind. If you're interested, if that looks like something that might help you in your journey, then reach out to me and we'll talk about it. Okay?
Yeah, it's awesome. It's
Yeah.
awesome.
So thanks for letting me walk through that. I'll try to make it tighter next time. We'll probably go through the wholesaling course next time. And coming soon is the publishing of the rent to own course. So I really want to get a couple of other modules done before I publish it, but we may just decide to publish it as is, and I'll add the modules later, and maybe we can put something together where we do the added modules with like a bigger group or something like that in case people have questions. So I'm just kind of stewing on that. So thank you for being here. One of my favorite sayings that I love from Abraham Lincoln, and I can't believe he said this kind of thing back when he was president of the United States. He said, "Things may come to those who wait, but only what's left behind by those who hustle." And so that word
Ooh,
hustle has been around for a long, long time, hasn't it?
wow.
Yeah. So it's a really cool quote.
Wow.
It's one of my favorite quotes. And keep
We should
that in
post that.
mind as you go forward into your week. And until we meet again, we will see you next Wednesday. Like I said, we'll probably go through the a wholesale course, just a overview to give you
Awesome.
an idea what's
Yeah.
there. And I'm sure I'll have a pile of questions that I'm going to go over. And if you have questions, then just join us and we'll be there. And the links around here somewhere. And we'll see you then.
Awesome.
Awesome. Yeah.
Bye, Julie.